launching a new teaching called Purpose Driven Strife. I know it's a play on words, and that's intentional, but we launched this series because in the life of Joseph, there are so many circumstances that happened in his life that created strife for him. But as you look back, you can see that sometimes you can see, despite the circumstances of life, you can see how you moved through it and God helped you get through it to where you are today. Some people, and there's kind of two trains of thought here. Some people believe the world is, I'll tell you this, I don't believe this one, but here's what some people believe, not me. God is in control of everything that happens in your life. Every circumstance that happens to you is something that God ordained, and there's no way you can get out of it. If you had a flat tire today, God caused a flat tire. If you had, the person you're married is the only person in the world for you, the job is the only job for you, everything in your life, it had to be that way. And that's called determinism. And people say, well, everything, that happens for a reason. If you believe that, it's this deterministic type of life. But it takes away a lot of free will. It takes away a lot of what Jesus taught. It takes away a lot of what the Old Testament taught. And it really, I think it's limiting. And here's where the problem. If you believe that, then a baby who dies at 1 year old from cancer, that's all part of God's cosmic plan. And I go, that sounds like a malevolent. That means bad. That sounds like a bad God, not a good God. And that kind of theology, as much as it makes us feel good that when my tire is flat, it's this bigger plan. There's this cosmic reason, I feel better about that. But when you run it to its logical conclusion, it really blames God for a lot of evil in the world, and I resent that. So where are you, Pastor, on this, your view? Well, I believe that everything that happens had a cause. There was a reason for everything that happened, but not everything happened for that reason. It's just things happen. Life is messy. It's full of chaos, but God so loved the world, he gave, created human beings that were not perfect. He gave us free will, and we make choices. But I think we have to take personal responsibility for our lives, and in so doing, we grow. I have a flat tire. Well, maybe it's no rude. Maybe it's because your tires had 50,000 miles on them and you were driving on balloons. Maybe it's because you just hit a curb. Maybe it's because you need to get off your texting. Oh, that's getting real personal, isn't it? Yeah, I need to back off that. I'm convicted myself. But maybe we need to take personal responsibility. Some call it the teleological or deterministic view. A lot of philosophy have talked about this. It's been debunked over the years. The book of Job tells us, hey, Job's a good man. Bad things happen in his life, but he still trusted God every day. That's what I want to suggest that we look at. Life is a gift, but life is full of struggles. Some have more struggles than others. When I blame God for my struggles, I cut him off from walking with me through those struggles. When I accept life, good and bad, with pain and joy, I can allow my life to be filled with a God who walks with me daily, regardless. So what are you saying, Pastor? The purpose-driven strife, God does not cause strife, but as we look through our life, we see how he's guided us through that very well. For example, there's a family that attends our church now, a young couple with 2 kids, and the little 5-year-old girl has cancer behind her eye. Probably going to lose her eye, is the latest word I heard. It breaks my heart. And when someone would say in this deterministic side, well, that's meant to be. I just don't think that's fair, and it's just, or it's loving. So that's why I reject that. But it's not that I reject God working in my life. I just reject that deterministic part. The story of Joseph, though, as we look at his story, we're going to focus for 7 weeks to see how God can be present in every circumstance, in every pitfall, in every pothole of your life. Life has tension and strife, but join me as we embrace God on the journey. Joseph, let me tell you a little about Joseph. He comes from the book of Genesis. Well, what about Genesis? Well, he was born to his dad and mama. Let me tell you about them in just a minute. But Genesis is full of beginnings. Matter of fact, Genesis means beginnings. And the book of Genesis starts with Adam and Eve in creation, and it ends with the death of Joseph. So there's the whole book, and we're going to look at this for 7 weeks about his story and his life, and it's pretty exciting. But if we were to go before and say, what is Genesis about? It's about origins, the beginning of consciousness, the beginning of self-awareness in the garden. Really, the eyes are open. Hey, I've disobeyed God. The origin of languages starts in Genesis, the Tower of Babel. The origin of the rainbow. Well, where did this rainbow come from? Well, let me tell you the story of Noah and the ark. The origin of faith. Abraham believed God. So let me tell you the descendants. Abraham's the first historic character on the scene in Genesis. He married Sarah. A lot of stories about Abraham and Sarah, we'll deal with that another day. But he had a son, Isaac. And Isaac, married Rebekah. And Jacob and Esau were their twin boys. Esau was kind of ruddy complected, and Jacob was very deceptive throughout his life. Later, Jacob wrestled with God, and he really wrestled with God according to the story, and his name was changed to Israel. So if you want to know the founding of Israel, it really goes all the way back to this guy, Jacob. The origin of the nation. Now, Jacob had 12 sons. Now, I want to talk about, people say, well, Pastor, do you believe in the biblical definition of marriage? I don't know what that is. Here's why. Jacob, the biblical definition, Jacob thought he was marrying Rachel, but he woke up the next morning, he'd married her sister. And then later on, not short after, then Leah became his wife too. So Jacob had 2 wives. And as you look at the babies that were born, let me tell you the birth of Jacob's sons. Leah, the one that was either blind or according to the scripture, we're not really sure, or hard to look at. She was weak on the eyes. We don't know if it meant she couldn't see or whether we had trouble seeing her. We just don't know. That's true in the language. But when he woke up, he didn't have any trouble, having 4 babies with her. So Leah's birth, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, the first 4 sons of the tribe of Judah, of Jacob. Then Bilhah, which was Rachel's servant. Rachel was his wife, and she wanted to have babies, and she couldn't have babies, so she said, here, take my servant. So Jacob had 2 more kids, Dan and Naphtali. Then Zilpah, Leah's servant, Leah said, I've already had 4 kids, let me get my servant involved here. So she had Gad and Asher. And then Leah got back involved with Jacob, and she had Issachar and Zebulun and one girl, Dinah. And then Rachel finally started having babies, and she had Joseph. This is the 11th boy. And Benjamin, number 12. And Rachel died in childbirth with Benjamin. Rachel was Jacob's first love. He's the one that he first fell in love with and wanted to marry. And when she died, Rachel's sons became Jacob's sons. So let's look at the story. It's a few verses to read. I'm going to try to read it long so you guys can follow quickly. But Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This story is about Joseph. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. Those are the 2 servants, and his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he'd been born to him in his old age, and he had made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him, which is Joseph, more than any of them, they hated Joseph and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream of what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, this is a great story, but it's just the beginning of a story, and there's so much fun in this story. So we're going to have a good time as we learn some things and also explore some things. There are 3 observations I want to give you, and they're in your notes today. You can fill in the blank if you want. Here's the first one. Number 1, Joseph was the favorite. Born to his father when he was an older guy, he was his favorite. And he was called, Jacob, also called Israel, had this strong affection for Joseph. And like I said before, he was born to Rachel, who had passed away. But you know how it is. More mature fathers see life through a different lens than very young fathers do. And he saw them in a different way, and he loved him. And he gave him this favorite gift that was extravagant. And he gave him an ornate robe. Now, you've been around a while. Joseph, what kind of coat did he have? A coat of many colors. You know what the original language says? A long-sleeved robe. That's it. How do you get coat of many colors out of a long-sleeved robe? This is going to kill that musical, right? Joseph had the multicolored, Technicolor dream coat. Thank you. So, but here, why is it this way? What do they really mean? Well, Hebrew language does not have all the adjectives that we would like for it to have. It's not as picturesque as we would like. So the best scholars look at this, and a robe with long sleeves, most of the time they wouldn't have long sleeves. In fact, they gave him a robe and it stood out, meant it was a flashy robe, probably a very Arabic in style, and through history they find that some of these extravagant robes were coats of many colors. Fair enough? So it's really a good translation of a very plain word, which I think is amazing. So, but Joseph wore this robe. And if he wore it the way your kids would have worn it, or the way I would have worn it, his mother probably had to peel it off him just to wash it once in a while, because he liked it all the time. And he wore that because it showed his status. Did you read all those times in that story where his brothers didn't like him? Joseph set a lot of that up. I mean, he annoyed his brothers. His brothers hated him for being the favored one. He's called the favorite. Let me talk about favoritism for just a second. Favoritism has a positive. Someone loves me more than others. Is it okay to have a favorite? Well, let me ask you, is it okay to have a favorite restaurant? Of course it is. Is it okay to have a favorite holiday? Yes. Some of you say, oh, my favorite holiday is Christmas or whatever. Is it okay to have a favorite sports team? Mine usually lose. It's okay. What about a favorite movie? A favorite season? Can I have a favorite person? I do. Her name is Becky, my spouse. Favoritism, those things which I prefer. We've all had favorites, favorite food, favorite shopping, favorite vacation places. Children, the choices we make are often based on our favorites. But favorites, as good as it is, it also has some negative. How so? When is favoritism bad? I think it's bad when I'm not the favorite. What do you think? It's a pretty good. I mean, favoritism is bad when it's viewed as prejudice. Some people favor a skin color. Favoritism can just be another name for prejudice. When someone says, well, I just favor white people, that's prejudice. That's when it's at its worst. Or when I have a disdain for another type of person, that's prejudice. And we're against that. In World War II in Nazi Germany, it was evident in the attempt that Hitler had to create the super race. Those who had a darker skin and darker eyes, who were Jewish, not the blonde-haired, blue-eyed group, were taken into custody. Many of them were killed because Hitler was prejudiced and favored his own type, and he hated the rest. It's potentially damage. And blindly favoring can lead to prejudice. But is it possible to love and not have a favorite? Sure. I mean, we have 3 children. We don't have a favorite. We have 5 grandchildren. We don't have a favorite. You say, well, some are easier to love than others at certain stages. Of course, that's true. But they're not favorites. According to what I understand, all are favored. All have been blessed. Years ago, someone gave me a bumper sticker, and I think this is what it said. And I love this bumper sticker. It said, Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite. I want you to know, I think that bumper sticker is true. But do you know what really frustrates me? Is I found out he has millions and millions of those bumper stickers, and he's been giving them out to everybody. So God favors us all. You are his favorite. Joseph was the favorite. Joseph also was a tattletale. Tattle is not a good thing. It wasn't, we used to have those little nursery rhymes, tattletale, tattletale, hang your, I don't know, my kids don't let me say britches. Hang your britches on a nail. That used to be a little thing we'd say, which is stupid. But Joseph was a tattletale. He ratted out his brothers. And this is what it says in verse 2. He brought a bad report about his brothers to his father. So let me confess to you. I have a sister that was born 1 year before me. She's 18 months older. And I have a sister that's 1 year after me, 13 months younger, Donna and Sandy. And on the last day of school in Tennessee, when I was in the 9th grade, just finishing the 9th grade, we rode a bus home. Now, I rode a bus an hour and a half to school, an hour and a half from school every day at that time. And it was the last day of school, and I was the last one on the bus. My two sisters and I were the last stop, first and last stop. And as we're going down this dirt road down a hill, her name was Miss Booker, I threw some paper out the window on this dirt road. And she goes, "Hey, stop doing that." And I got up, I was on the back seat, and I opened the back door of the bus. And she said, "Larry Baucom, you shut that door right now." And I spoke very disrespectfully to her and said, "Don't threaten me, I'll jump." I'm just telling you what it was. I opened the door and jumped out and walked home. As I was jumping out the door, she was saying these words, "Larry Baucom, next year you're going to be in the front seat of this bus. Every day of the year, you're never going past the front seat. You are on the front seat." And as I walked home, I go, "We're moving. We're moving." I knew we were moving. I wasn't stupid. I acted stupid, but I knew we were moving. And I just thought, I win. And I remember walking to the house just feeling so good about it. I just walked, several blocks through the woods home, and there were my two sisters standing there with my mother. And I went, "Oops." And I remember them saying, "Oh, Mom, he just humiliated us. He's so embarrassing. The way he talked to her is so disrespectful." And she said, "What do you think you should get as a punishment?" I go, "We're moving." I'm going to miss her. I don't think I ever got punished by my mother, which is her fault, not mine. But those sisters, you know what? They ratted me out. They ratted me out. You can tell it doesn't bother me. I bring it up all these years later. But, a way to make others feel less important or to make them feel less overall is to point out their flaws. Go to someone and say, "Hey, I want you to know, you've got these issues, you've got these flaws." That's terrible. You affect their self-esteem. What's even worse is when you tell those comments to others about someone. See, in 2019, I'm going to give you a suggestion for you and me. Let's choose confession over tattling. One of the great needs of the Christ follower is when we take time with God and we're honest with Him. In my quiet time, and I've talked about this for many years now, I have just a few structure points for me. And I'm not telling you have to use these. I think it's good for you to meditate, contemplate. I think it's just good for you to turn your phone off, turn the TV off, and spend some time in thought, maybe with your eyes shut. But this is what I do. I go through in my mind, there's an acronym I use. It's called PART, PART, LM. And my middle name is Mark, so I think in my part, PART, Larry Mark, this is what I do. First thing I do is praise. And I just take a few moments and I spend some time telling God what He already knows. But it's good for me to say it because it reminds me who He is. I simply say, you're all around me. You're the force that's everywhere. You're the breath of life. You're the light of the world. You're energy. You are the Almighty. You're the Father, the Alpha, the Omega, all the things I think of. And I'd simply remind myself who God is. That's the P, praise. The second part I do is admit. Another word for this is confession. I open my heart to God and I tell Him about my faults, my shortcomings, my failures, my blindness, my too busyness, my mouth. And you can tell it's got me in trouble a lot in my life. And I tell Him about that. My lack of being Christ to a hurting neighbor or family member. Confession. Then I go to request. Those hurting that I mentioned to the Father. Those are in my family who need support, and those hurting around me that I mention their names out loud. Let me tell you a story. In December, just last month, 19th, is the birthday of a friend of mine, Walt Rogel. Walt passed away May 10th last year, or a year and a half ago. And Walt's been a friend of mine for many years, and been part of this church community for a long time. And as his birthday comes around, I still have it on my phone. I still have on my phone my last conversation, when someone leaves you a voicemail, leaves you and you save it. I have several of those from Walt because I play those once in a while. And on his birthday, I played those few that I had because I remember him. And as I remember him, I honor him. And something about remembering someone honors them. And in my prayer time, my request, it's just as important for me to say your name or those who are going through a difficulty because it helps me remember you, know you're going through something. And that burden, you may not believe it, is being shared by other people as they pray for you. Then I go to Thanksgiving. I just tell God thanks. I'm blessed beyond what I ever deserve. Gratitude, acknowledging God's grace. I count my blessings, my health, my family, my resources. I'm grateful for that. And then, so P-A-R-T, praise, admit, request, thanksgiving. L means listen. Then I'm quiet. I don't say anything. I let my mind try to connect with God. And if I open my heart to him, what I hear whispering in my texting to my heart is, I love you, Larry. Open your heart to more of me. Take time. This is where your resource of life begins, is in this connection. And the last thing, M, is message. And as he's doing things, I'm jotting down. I need to call this person. I need to do this. It's kind of a to-do list, not of take out the mail or what those kind of things. It's simply a to-do list of people, of needs. But when I get to this point, confession, I think it's a secret weapon of the Christ follower. Because when I confess, I'm taking responsibility for my life and I'm no longer blaming. And I'm not tattling to God about what people are doing. I'm simply taking responsibility for who I am. Joseph was a youngster at 17 years old. He's kind of like me at the back of the bus, saying some stupid things and being very disrespectful, but we learn our lessons through those things. He was a youngster and had to learn you can't go around telling people and talking to people the way that he did and not have consequences. Today, let me talk less about others and let me become a tattletale to God about my own shortcomings. It makes me a better person. It's not what others do. It's what I do and how I respond to others that I can control. I can't control you, but I can control the way I respond to you. Joseph was a favorite. He also was a tattletale. Third point, he was a dreamer. Seeing things that others do not see does not have to be a problem. Joseph had this dream and he saw these sheaves, which are kind of like lots of big pieces of grass and 4 or 5 foot bundles this big around, and they're laying on the ground. And his stood up though, and all the rest of them knelt down before him. I mean, that was a dream. A dream can be a blessing, but it also can be perceived as arrogant. I mean, what he was really telling his brothers, I again am the favorite. And his brothers, you're going to bow down to me. Folks, I have 8 brothers and sisters, and you know that if you've been attending here a while. The firstborn, Dean, had some advantage, and then maybe Dennis. Then the baby, Philip and Ben, the 2 boys, they had some advantage. Those of us in the middle, I don't think we had the advantage. I was born number 6 out of 9 kids, all from the same parents. The big kids, first 4, the next 3, the last 2. Dean, Dennis, Sherry, Jimmy, Donna, Larry, Sandy, Philip, Ben. I mean, big kids, little kids, babies. 4 years, 1 year, 3 years in a row, and then 2 years. When Donna was born, my sister, a year older, my mother tells me that she was as cute as could be. And she said, then you were born, and you were the baby, but just a short time, 13 months later, the real baby was born. And she said, you didn't get a lot of attention. And I want you guys to know it's really affected me in some very negative way. I can't figure out what it is, but I'm sure it has in some way. But I will tell you this, there's never one time that I ever felt like in my family, and I'm not whining, I never at one time felt that I was the favorite. I felt like I was dispensable. At some point in my life, where I really found that I was the favorite was in my connection with Jesus. Somewhere in that process, I wanted to become a pastor because the love that I felt in my life from this relationship with God was amazing. But as I grew up in the home, I will tell you, I was the first one to formally graduate. Out of 9 kids, number 6, I was the first one, only one to ever walk through and get a high school diploma. Now, the other got it in different ways, but I'm the only one who walked. I was the first to graduate from college. I was the first to get a graduate degree. I was the only one to get a PhD. I married well. I was committed to my education. Most of all, the anchor in my life has been my relationship to Jesus. And I'm committed to following him more than anything else. There's something about Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite that I really believe is true. And I don't mind if we're all his favorites. But it has affected the way I live my life. It's given me a confidence. It's given me this inner strength that I think comes from him. Now, I will tell you that I have some problems with my mouth on occasion, like daily. I told my family one time, I said, I've gone to this education, all this stuff, and I'm a pastor, and I said, every family there's a black sheep in every family, that cliche. I said, I'm the white sheep. They didn't laugh at that at all. There's sometimes when you say things like that, you can be perceived as arrogant. And sometimes I've been annoying, and at times I confess to you, I have been arrogant. I don't deny it. You want to hear a secret? So can you. It's not a singular trait. It's one we all share. It's one that's a part of all our lives. And in the mind of Joseph, in the mind of his brothers, Joseph was arrogant. He just had a problem. And he was so audacious because you can't go around telling everyone all your dreams when they're not ready. You know what's really amazing? As we go to the end of the story, you'll find out the dreams he told came true. That's the amazing part. You can't go around telling others that you're favored more than they are. Even though I do it, but you shouldn't. What's the next dream? More cosmic. Telling your parents, hey, you guys are going to kneel before me too, along with their brothers and sisters. You know what? Some dreams are better kept silent. Some people are not ready for your dreams. When I started Suncoast, I had a God-sized dream, but I could not dispense it all at once because it scared me, and I knew it would terrify others. In our society today, there's lots of anxiety. Some dreams will cause anxiety. Some will cause fear. Some will even cause hostility. I mean, we're in a world that has more anxiety than I remember. Chemicals, what causes it? Foods, expectation. Maybe we're just going so fast. We don't know, but anxiety is real. And Jacob may have tolerated, the father may have tolerated Joseph seeing himself as superior to his brothers. But the day he said, you'll kneel to me too, he kind of rebuked him. Even those who love you most will rebuke you if you reveal your dreams too quickly to them. Some dreams are not to be revealed until the appropriate now. Every now and then, and it happened just a couple weeks ago, every now and then someone will come to me, the grand hall will be full, and it was Christmas Eve, and someone who'd been attending here for a while, they came to me and they said, did you ever dream this would happen, all these people? And I don't want to be audacious, but the answer is yes. I have big dreams, and it's okay. But the question is, and even more, so my question to you, are you a dreamer? More importantly, are your dreams consistent with God's dream for your life? That's more important. Have you ever woke up with vivid dreams, only to forget them in just a few moments? I know that I dream a lot, and I don't remember what I dream, but what I do notice that I have a notepad. If you were to go in my bedroom now, look at my nightstand right there, you'd see a legal pad with a pen there. It's been there for years. And I get up in the night many times, and my brain does not seem to shut off, and I'll write down these thoughts, and it allows me to go back to sleep. In 1991, I wrote a PhD dissertation that was based on 3 themes. I didn't know what I was going to write on. In the middle of the night, I woke up, I wrote down 3 concepts, and it became the structure for a whole dissertation, 180 pages. And it's something happens in our psyche at night. Something happens in our dream world. In 1998, I woke up after a time of prayer. I was awake, but in my time of prayer, I had this dream that God would create a community called Suncoast. So today, as we study life and circumstances and Joseph, here's my prayer for you. Not that you see my dream, but that you see yours. And even if it creates anxiety for you, you don't have to tell everybody about it. Just consider it. What God can do through the hearts and lives of people can change the world. He does love you today. Can I pray for you? Father, in moments like this, you challenge us to be more than what we are. I am so willing, Father, to confess to you all my faults and shortcomings and the need of more God in my life, more awareness, more grace. I confess that. but I confess also that all of us need you. We want to follow the teachings of Jesus, the teaching of love and grace, and helping the downhearted and the oppressed, encouraging those who are broken to be better. Father, I pray that you do your work in our lives as only you can. In Christ's name, amen. Would you stand, please? If you want to pray at the end of the service, there's someone up here to pray with you. Also, to remind you that it is communion weekend, so you can come up and have communion if you'd like. I was sent this story. A couple different people in this audience sent it to me in the last year or so. And so I thought I would share it with you. I think it's really a good story. Story of an eyewitness account from New York City on a cold day in December some years ago. A little boy about 10 years old was standing outside a store window on the sidewalk, cold, barefooted, looking through a window and shivering. And a lady approached this young guy and said, man, you're in such deep thought. What are you doing staring through the window? And he said, I was asking God to give me a pair of shoes. The lady took him by the hand and she walked in the store and she asked the clerk, can you get me 6 pairs of socks and a pair of shoes the size of this boy? And he did. And she said, can you help me find a place where I could get some water and a towel? And he said, follow me. So she went to the back of the store and he got this little basin for her and had the little boy sit down, and she put his feet in the water and she washed his dirty feet and she dried them with a towel, and she put socks on him and shoes on him, and she took the rest of the socks, the other 5 pairs, and bundled them up and gave them to him and said, here, this should make you feel a little more comfortable now. When she did that, he looked up at her and he said, with tears in his eyes, are you God's wife? So here's my question. What are you and I doing that reminds others of God? What are you and I doing that someone say, are you a brother to Jesus or a sister to Jesus? Not a bad idea for this new year. Remember, God loves you today. So do I. God bless. Thanks for coming.